And welcome back to the Touchline Talk show. It is time to talk MLS Cup. Going to kind of break this preview down into a couple different sections. This matchup in particular, there are some really interesting things to discuss about the short history between these two teams, specifically at Bank of California Stadium. So that is where I'm going to start, and then, like I've been doing throughout the MLS and NWSL playoffs, sort of my three keys, my three things to look at for this game. And then I've added a new section just for MLS Cup, talking about an X factor for each team. So let's jump in, starting with the history between these two teams. Philadelphia Union, LAFC have played 4 times. One of those resulted in a team winning. That was LAFC back in 2018. Since then, 3 draws. If you remember, we've had some phenomenal games between these two teams at Bank of California Stadium. And this is one of the things that needs to be emphasized heading into this game. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what it means to me, because on one hand, the Philadelphia Union are not scared of going into that building. 2 of the best performances they've had in this 3-year stretch, where they won a Supporters' Shield, nearly got to MLS Cup last season and had the COVID situation, and got to MLS Cup this season, since they've become arguably the best, most consistent team in MLS. 2 of their best performances came at LAFC, and they didn't win either of those games. So you can kind of spin that any way you want, where they're not going to be intimidated by that environment. They're capable of playing really well there, but can they actually win if they already played that well and still didn't beat LAFC? We're going to hopefully sort of get an answer to that question on Saturday. A couple things to note about these 2 performances in particular. It was a 2-2 draw and a 3-3 draw. If you remember, the 3-3 draw was the last game in Major League Soccer before it shut down from COVID. The one where Jacob Glesnes scored from outside the stadium, and Carlos Vela, I believe that was also the game he had a brilliant free kick. Quite possibly the best, most entertaining Major League Soccer regular season game I've ever seen. And then there was a 2-2 as well this season. The last 2 times, those 2 games at Bank of California Stadium, the Philadelphia Union have had 5 leads. They have scored first all 5 times, if you will. They have never trailed at Bank of California Stadium in those 2 games. Those leads have lasted, on average, less than 15 minutes. In the 2020 game, they lasted 9 minutes, 1 minute, and 2 minutes. This is one of the really fascinating aspects of getting this game in MLS Cup for me. Is, first of all, what happens if the Union don't score the first goal? Second, if the Union do score the first goal, can they actually hold on to a lead in the stadium? Because they have really struggled to do that. 5 opportunities, and they have allowed a goal to LAFC every single time. Okay, into the keys. First, I'm going to keep talking about this because it's so vital to what the Philadelphia Union do, and in this matchup in particular, because of the transformation LAFC has undergone this season under Steve Cherundolo. Transition moments. In theory, LAFC is going to be the team with more of the possession, with the responsibility and the pressure. How do LAFC deal with that? Because they are not playing a team like Austin who is willing to have the ball. The Union want no part of the ball, which makes this a really interesting tactical matchup, because LAFC also want to beat you in those transition moments. I've mentioned this before. If you go back and look at their possession numbers, they have decreased dramatically since the Bob Bradley era, meaning the season. So who has more of the ball? Can they find a way to still sort of get those transition moments? Or are the Union going to be able to do what the Union want to do? Because there's a real argument this game plays into so many of the things the Union do well. There's no pressure on them. They're not at home. They're the underdogs. They've kind of had to adjust their mindset now that they're kind of the team everybody is hunting, at least in the East. This game allows them to go back to being the scrappy underdogs, which is another really interesting aspect of this. So, who has more of the ball? If it is LAFC, like I expect it to be, how do they deal with that? Second, who can actually limit the other team from getting out in transition? It is what the Union do. It's how they want to play. Can you stop the ball from getting into Daniel Gazdag's feet? Because he has been phenomenal at then getting the ball to Julian Carranza and Michael Ura, and the three of them, linking up together, holding play, holding the ball up. It's sensational. If you're LAFC, that's what you have to stop. And if you're the Union, you don't want Denny Buwanga and Carlos Vela and Chicho Arango running at you. They are taking their opportunities, all three of them. Buwanga's in really good form now. Arango's still scoring goals. Carlos Vela is going to be ready. So this is where the game is going to be decided for me, is who gets to kind of do this their way, so to speak. And do we have one or two clear transition opportunities that ultimately determine this game? Second, not going to overthink this one too much, the front threes for both teams. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games. Your big-time players, with the exception of Andre Blake and the Union's back line, for the most part, generally speaking, your big-time players are up front for both of these teams, as is the case with most soccer teams in the world. Unions have not been particularly noisy or successful, with the exception of the end of that NYCFC game. Carranza scored, then Carranza creates that second goal for Gazdag, and all of a sudden, now the production looks much better. But the first half against NYCFC, that entire Cincinnati game, so 3/4 of the playoff minutes essentially, they have not been particularly effective at creating chances. That is a concern. They have to be better in this game. Now, the flip side to that is these guys are too good to stay quiet for that long. This could be the game where they are absolutely brilliant. And on LAFC's side, this is why you spent all the money. You've got the best attacking trio in the league. They got to deliver. And then the other part of this for me is what happens when you start making substitutions. Corey Burke came on and scored a goal for the Union against NYCFC. Corey Burke is incredibly difficult to deal with. Corey Burke works incredibly hard. He just makes your life miserable, as does this entire Union front three. It's the other part of what they do is they do the dirty work incredibly well. And then on LAFC side, are you taking one of these three guys out of the game? If so, who? And if you are, who is coming in? Does Gareth Bale have a role to play here? Is Muhalo Poku? Do you get a drop-off if you do have to make a sub for some reason? All of it sort of goes into just which of these teams gets more production, has a better game from their front three. Because that's going to play right into those transition moments. And that's where this game is going to be won or lost, is who gets the most out of their best players, who gets the ball to their best players the most. And then the third thing I'm looking at, the number sixes. They are very different players, which makes this really interesting to talk about. But there are a couple things going on here. Another important part of this game is going to be the Union's press. And the idea that part of what the Union like to do is cause chaos. They like to disrupt teams, force turnovers, right? It's a similar approach to Liverpool in that sense. Elie Sanchez is the opposite of chaos. So one of these two things has to give. either the Union are going to be able to get that press going, they're going to be able to sort of really bother LAFC as they're trying to build and make the game ugly, which LAFC are more equipped to deal with now. That was my big criticism under Bob Bradley. They didn't have, when they couldn't play this beautiful open possession-based game, they didn't have a plan B. That has changed this season. But it all starts with Ilie Sanchez being able to set the tempo. Can the Union stop him from doing that successfully? And on the other side of it, can Ilie Sanchez be the guy to sort of be that outlet and break this press with his passing ability, with his vision, his understanding of the game, all of the stuff that makes him a great player? Because if he is unbothered and he's able to just go about his business the way he typically does, the Union are in trouble. Part of this has to be stopping him from getting those passes that break your lines and get the ball going quickly the other way to those guys who, again, want to play in transition. All that starts with that midfield, and that midfield starts with Ilie Sanchez. On the Union side, Jose Martinez. 1, can he keep his head? Does he get a yellow card in the first 15 minutes and have to change the way he plays? Does he get a yellow card in the first 15 minutes, make a reckless challenge in the 57th, and get sent off? Or is he able to walk that line that sometimes he struggles with and he goes right up against and put in another really, really good performance? Because he's so important to what the Union do. And his distribution is getting to the point where it's underrated and underappreciated. He is the guy that is going to be able to stop LAFC from getting into all of those transition moments. He's going to be able to break play up. He's going to be able to make it chaotic. He's going to stop them from being able to sort of connect all of these passes and make it disjointed and get the Union going the other way. So if it's not going to be decided by the front three and the big names, the other spot I'm looking at is that number 6 position. They're very different players. They play the position completely differently, but they are still both instrumental to what their teams do. And if one of them feels like they have a greater impact on this game, that's going to go a long way to determining who ultimately is going to win. X factors. On the Union side, Jack McGlynn. First, does he start the game? What is the health status of Alejandro Bedoya? If he is able to give you something, but probably not 90 minutes, is it better to start him so you can hope to get him to halftime like you did against NYCFC and not burn that extra substitution window? Or are you going to try and save him and know you might have to then sub him off if he can't go? That is one of my thoughts of making Jack McGlynn the X factor, is what role does he actually play in this game? Does he start? Does he come on in the second half? Is he a prototypical sub where he enters in the 70th minute? What role does he play? And then, secondly, I'm going to lean toward he starts and sort of assume that's going to be the way this goes. And if that's the case, or if he's in there for at least 45 minutes, can Jack McGlynn be tactically aware enough and be in the right spots to stop LAFC, again, going back to transition? One of the things you'll look at with that NYCFC goal, I saw Matt Doyle point this out of MLSsoccer.com. That space, it's called Zone 14, right in front of the 18-yard box. Jose Martinez had vacated it. Jack McGlynn didn't fill in. How often do you see Alejandro Bedoya end up in that area to go make a tackle, to block a pass, to get in somebody's way? It is all of those little things that make Alejandro Bedoya so great and so important to this team and allows this system to work as well as it does. Jack McGlynn gives you a lot of great things, and I'm going to get to those next. But if you're making those kind of mistakes and you're allowing LAFC to pick up those kind of spaces, they are going to punish you. And that one moment could very well decide this game. So that's the first part of this, is if Jack McGlynn's playing a key role, can he deliver from an understanding the game, where he is on the field, taking away space, all of those kind of things, just the overall tactics of it. Second, on the positive side with Jack McGlynn, can his passing be the difference in this game? He is a phenomenal passer. And there's sort of two facets to this. One, you saw what he can create in terms of goal-scoring chances with that cross he put in to Carranza for one of those goals against NYCFC. You've seen him score at least one really good goal is coming to mind because he's a phenomenal technician. So there's that part of it of he has the ability to make that one, special moment of brilliance that decides a game. The other part of it is, can he be the connector from the defense to the attack for the Union? So much of, if you watch the Union play, so much of their buildup is, well, there's a decent amount on the left because of Kai Wagner. But from a midfield standpoint, it is so heavily skewed to the right because of Alejandro Bedoya and the way he gets up and down the field. Leon Flock is just not the kind of player who's going to make those passes and is going to take guys one-on-one and combine and make runs into the box. All the stuff Alejandro Bedoya does. So if, from a build-up standpoint, a lot of it comes down the right. Or it's Kai Wagner overlapping on the left. But if Jack McGlynn's in there instead of Alejandro Bedoya, he's now the guy responsible for that. And he's certainly capable of doing so. This is much more in his skill set and the stuff he's really good at. But it's not just his ability to break lines with the passes. It's also his ability to set tempo. His ability to just make the simple pass that then leads to something positive for his team. It's one of the things I love about him. He's already great at this. He has great understanding of what is happening around him when he has the ball and kind of what he needs to do to keep the team moving forward. That is going to be really, really important in this game. So those are kind of the two sides of this Jack McGlynn X Factor. Does he become a liability because he doesn't have, decade plus of experience and year 7 or 8 or something for Bedoya with this Union team now? Or does the raw skill and the raw ability he has end up being a positive? Time will tell whether this ends up being a huge storyline or just kind of a minor note that maybe he comes on in the 75th minute because the Union need a goal and he has an opportunity to change the game. It could be that simple, but when I'm thinking X factors for the Union, because I just have, nobody really knows what role he's going to play, I went with Jack McGlynn. On the LAFC side, Jose Cifuentes. The reason for this is fairly simple. I wasn't going to go with Gareth Bale because I'm not convinced Gareth Bale can make a difference in this game. I'm not convinced he's going to have the opportunity to. With whatever injuries he's got going on, I had a hard time getting to a point where I was considering him an X factor. So I went with Cifuentes instead. Partially because you look at that bench and there isn't somebody that screams difference maker. That was supposed to be Gareth Bale or whatever combination of substitutes. It could be Opoku. But I went with something I feel more confident in, and that is Cifuentes. He is the guy from this LAFC midfield that actually contributes to goals. Ilie Sanchez, incredibly important. I talked about everything he does for this team. Kellen Acosta, terrific free kick taker, plays, both sides, offense, attack and defense. The guy who actually gets up the field and joins the attack from a getting inside the box and making things happen in the box standpoint is Cifuentes. And my thought process behind this being really important in this game is that I'm not convinced you're going to be able to beat that combination of Blake, the back four, and Martinez with 3 guys. You need other runners in the box because those center backs are so good. And this is sort of operating in a world where this game looks And it's quite possible because it's a final, it looks very different. But if we get another high scoring game, another wide open game, the Union have proven there are goals in there for them to get at this stadium. So you're probably not talking about a 1-0 unless this goes very differently because it is a cup final. And that's another interesting part of this that I hadn't really thought about until now is just, do we get the same kind of game? Because I kind of think we're going to. In that situation where goals are coming in and you're not just trying to win 1-0, you got to get guys in the box. You've got to have more people causing problems that need to be paid attention to than just that front three, as good as they are. I trust Blake and the 5 guys in front of him to be able to generally deal with that. And also you can throw Leon Flock in there because Leon Flock is great defensively too. And also, let's just say it's not the best day at the office for that front three. Who else can come in and make a difference and actually put that goal on the board, whether it's them scoring it themselves or the assist? And it's Jose Cifuentes. His numbers are really good. He very well may be on his way to Europe after this game. He is one of the more underappreciated players in MLS because he's not a big name on this team. He's just another one of those guys that you look up and, oh yeah, he's one of the best players in the league at his position. He's been sensational. So that's the guy I'm looking for, because to me it's cheating to say that Arango or Buanga or Carlos Vela is an X factor. They're just key factors. To me, X factor means something different. So those are your X factors. Jack McGlynn for Philadelphia, Jose Cifuentes for LAFC. I will make my prediction now. It's kind of a prediction. I will say this. If I'm Philadelphia, I kind of quietly feel confident about this, knowing the pressure is not on me whatsoever. My thought process from the beginning of the playoffs was one of these two teams was going to get to MLS Cup, was going to host MLS Cup, and was going to win MLS Cup. Now, I had LAFC losing El Tráfico. So that pick for me was the Union. So I'm going to stick with that, even though I feel much less confident about it now, because I needed to see LAFC prove to me they could win in multiple ways, and they have proven that. They are not just the most talented team in this league. They are a team now equipped to succeed in the postseason. It's not an accident. This is the season they made it to MLS Cup. But at the end of the day, if you look at all of the things that allow a team to be successful in the postseason, this applies across the board. I've sort of taken this from talking college basketball. The Union still have the best goal difference in the league. The Union still have the best defense in the league. The Union have an attack that scored as many goals as, you can give the slight edge to LAFC, that's fine. The Union now have the difference makers that can be the best player on the field in a game like this, in Gazdag and Carranza and Ura. The Union were more consistent throughout the season. I've said this before, I'll mention it one more time. If this were any other league in the world, the Union would be hosting this game as Supporters' Shield champions. Supporters' Shield winners, I should say. So my head says you're not beating LAFC in front of the 32-52. My heart says this Union team really has been the best team in the league all season. And it was my prediction, so I'm going to stick with it. If you would have told me LAFC was getting to MLS Cup, I would have picked LAFC to win. I will acknowledge that much. But I didn't think we were going to get both 1 seeds. That was where I was wrong, but also backed up by years and years of data suggesting this wasn't going to happen. I'm thrilled that it did. So I'm gonna stick with what I predicted going in, which is the Philadelphia Union to win MLS Cup. This should be a phenomenal game. I cannot wait. We are going to get ourselves a champion of the highest order, from regular season performance to postseason. There is nothing you can say about either of these teams. Hopefully we just get a phenomenal open game like these teams have played at Bank California Stadium in the past. and we will see what happens from there. I will have full coverage after the game, planning to be in the press conference, so be sure to be on the lookout for a recap video, as well as my written match report on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com. It will also be posted on Medium. Forgot to mention that too.